Come on in. Thank you so much. Honored to be here, humbled to be here. Anywhere I get to travel, it's obviously a wonderful experience. And I'm here to share, not sell. So first part is this is a safe environment. So you are allowed to disagree. You are allowed to agree. You can have any opinion you want. And I'm just here to share, to hopefully stimulate your thinking and add value to your coaching. And the whole point of this is obviously I'm adding value to your coaching so you can add value to their experience, to the player's experience, and do some things from there. Now, since I have my daughters here, I'm just going to do something really quick with you before I get them involved, just because it's a little bit easier in perspective to be able to give you some ideas relative to what we do and how we do it. My daughter Kennedy is 11. Just so you don't hear the mic. So this is called Shoulder Game. Shoulder Game is on YouTube, Basketball Immersion, YouTube, IMMERSON. If you're not sure, you can go see it. But Shoulder Game is a way to be able to connect skills and decisions. And that's my whole thing, is that instead of doing on-air practice, meaning practice with no defense, and I'll talk about where we put that in context, we're trying to incorporate skill development and decision. This is not live decision making. Live decision making is offense versus defense in whatever context you have it, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, etc. But this is a bridge between doing it on air and doing it live. In Shoulder Game, all that's going to happen is I am an active participant in her learning. This is guided practice. So I toss her the ball. Every time she catches it, she fights for her feet. Hop on one foot. She gets 2 feet to the ground. Everything starts from your feet. So whatever you want to define as a fundamental, I could say, okay, we do that. We just may do it a little bit differently in terms of how we incorporate it. So right now she's focusing on her feet first because everything starts from her feet. Now, what happens is if I pass her the ball and my hands are out, that cues a decision. The decision is pass. That represents the game. If a defender is arm length away from you, you don't have what?
Space.
She doesn't have space. Space is always the answer. Everything that we do in player development or team development connects to our principles of play. So what I would argue is the number one fundamental in basketball is space. Teaching them where space is, how to create space, and then obviously basketball is a game of opposites. So if you want to create space on offense, what does the defense want to do? Take away space. And to me, my other daughter's 9, Kennedy's 11, I can teach their group basketball based on that concept of space, and I'll show it more with these guys when we get them out there. So this cues a decision. She doesn't have space, so she's now into a secondary decision. If she catches the ball, you're gonna shoot, and she has space, then she shoots. If she doesn't have space, she's gonna pass. So she doesn't know what she's gonna do each time she's gonna catch the ball, and that represents the game of basketball. We can do these drills where we do on-air block drills. I'm not anti doing them, where she knows she's gonna shoot 10 in a row from the same spot over and over again. But that's memorization. Basketball is not a dance recital. It's not a dance recital. You don't get to memorize it and then execute it. You've got to make decisions based on perception, action, coupling. You perceive, you decide, you execute, and then you get feedback on what happens. So every player you coach, before they execute a skill, they perceive, then they decide, then they execute the skill. So the third part of the equation, which coaches often spend a lot of time on, is actually the skill. But we're skipping the 2 parts that happen before it often if we don't have defense or offense connected, if we don't have decisions connected. So the reason we're doing Shoulder Game as player development for her is because we want her each time to have to make a decision prior to executing a skill. We can incorporate different things. If I flip my hips, then it cues her to drive. If I reach and gap, then it cues her to attack and counter. From there, everything that you teach your players or everything that you value for your players, say you want them to finish off 2 feet, then you can constrain her and say every finish at the rim has to be 2 feet, or every finish at the rim has to be a back pivot. So we can still use coaching interventions, we can still use coach or skill development, but we just incorporate it in more random and variable ways. Because that ultimately will lead to what we call retrieval practice, which leads to retention. And I'll talk about that more as we go through it, and I'll show something quickly with Presley. So every time she shoots, and there's variations of shoulder game, but really she doesn't know what she's gonna do until I cue her. I'm an active participant in her learning, we're working together. But now she's applying skills and decisions at the same time. Awesome stuff, Ken. Thank you. Press. Kennedy is the player so far, and we all have unique people that we coach. Kennedy gets up every morning at 5:45 a.m. to play about 10 to 15 minutes of basketball a day. I'm just a rebounder as her dad. Now, sometimes she asks me to coach her, or sometimes I put her in a situation, say, how many times can you go between your legs and shoot in different ways? So we can create challenges for her to be able to work on her game. Presley is a little bit less consistent with what she wants to do and when she wants to do it. And you know what? That's cool. That's amazing. Learning is nonlinear. Development is nonlinear. The way she develops and the way she develops, very different. But you know what? They're both getting pretty good. And they're both getting good in their own way. And that's why I can't put a player in a box and say, you got to do this exactly this way. Because what's more important than my solution is their solution. And we'll talk more about that as we go. Actually, let's move up there. So how do we develop shooting? And I just want to show this quickly. Rob, you can go, pass it. Okay, Rob Fedor, who did the basketball podcast, he's the Miami Heat shooting coach. This, instead of teaching chest pass, which by and large I would argue chest pass don't happen in the game of basketball, basically any pass within your body doesn't happen anymore because defense is too good. Most passes are outside your body, even a chest pass is outside your body. But this is working on representing your shot. So you would start, put your feet together, put your feet together. This is no wide. Nothing you do in basketball at no wide. Shoulder width apart, that's shooting position. Her shoulder width apart may be different than Kennedy's shoulder width apart. There's individual differences in players, and what's most important is, how does it feel for her? How does it feel for her? So I want it to feel good for her. I don't want it to feel like it's going against her body in any way. Go one more step. Too wide. Too wide is dribbling, it's defense, and then 3 wide is pivoting and getting out of trouble. So we want to teach footwork, but we teach it again in the context of the game and the application of the skill it's going to be used. So this shooting is working on extension, full extension of elbow, shoulder, and working on offhand, fingers to the sky instead of turning. And it's a way to represent the shot. Now, what do we do very quickly? We go to the rim, and if you look at me, she's going to roll up the ball. Start it on her thigh. She's going to roll up the ball, put her offhand on the side, and then lift and go into her shot. Awesome effort, Press. Cool. Now, as you can see, she is not a good shooter yet. Kennedy, when do you have to be a good shooter? After pubescence, we'll start to worry about shooting more. Right now, what we want to do is not have things happen within her body that mess her up when she gets to 14 and above. Meaning, avoid hip turns, avoid shoulder turns, avoid pushing from the chest, working on lifting the ball, extension. That's what matters at this age. And the other thing that matters at this age is, and I believe at all ages, the skill, the decision is more important than the skill. To me, if Presley catches the ball in a game and she's in range and in rhythm, she should shoot the ball. I don't care if it goes in. We're going to evaluate all decisions independent of outcome. And the most important development thing I feel I can do for young players is to empower them to play offense. Why don't you work on your game? Why don't you work on your game? Well, because we go to practice and all we do is we do three-man weave, we do defensive drills, we screen, we pass, we pivot, and I'll get to shoot. You are basically telling players to go play netball, where you don't get to play offense, unless you're one of two players, right? We don't want that. We want all players to feel empowered to play basketball. So regardless of outcome, and I know this is hard because we all want to win, regardless of outcome, I want her to shoot open shots whenever she's open. Whenever she's open, she should shoot an open shot. And if she doesn't shoot an open shot, she's wrong. Now, I'll give you a mantra that'll connect that for you. Now, what she wants to do then, pass it to me, roll it up, shoot it, and now shoot a normal shot. And now shoot a normal shot. Perfect. So what you want to do, thank you, Press, amazing. What you want to do as a coach is, how do you progress something? Okay, we may teach it initially in a little bit of a blocked way, meaning she's going to do this repetitively to get a representation of what she needs to do. But after that, I want to mix it. Mixing is a huge part of the learning process, and this connects back to retrieval practice. I stimulate retrieval practice, meaning she's on the verge of forgetting, and now she has to retrieve it, what she did previously. That retrieval practice leads to retention. If I have her repetitively for like weeks and weeks and weeks, just do this, roll up the ball and shoot, roll up the ball and shoot, what does she get good at? Rolling up the ball to shoot. Well, we don't want that. We want it to represent the shot, so we mix all those things together, and then eventually what we do is remove any of the guidance whatsoever.